Tonight is Wednesday, October 10th, 6:33 p.m. I will call the regular session of the Air Shirley Regional School Committee to order. I'm sorry, I couldn't get off my agenda. There it is. All right. So first we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Roll call, Mr. Quinty.
Present.
Ms. Simmons.
Here.
Ms. Granger.
Here.
I'm Jonathan DeForge here. Ms. Richards. And Mr. Gleason. All right, so these two are not here yet. All right. So those attending tonight's meeting should be aware that the meeting is being audio and video recorded by APAC and ASRSD. Any audience members who wish to record any part of the meeting must inform the chair, who will announce the recording. This is to comply with the MA wiretap statute. The listings of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. All right, is there any public participation on any of the agenda items tonight? Seeing none, thank you. All right, so just bear with me for one moment while I grab my notepad here. Okay. So first thing, I'd just like to announce who some of our guests are this evening. We have Ms. Livingston, Chair of the Board of Selectmen in Air, Mr. Pomprion, Town Manager from the Town of Air, Mr. Manley from Loch Lord, who's our Bond Counsel, and then Mr. Kevin Bresnahan, who's our General Counsel from Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lahane. So they'll be sort of helping us work through some of this tonight. Thank you for everyone else who's joined us this evening. So project update, first item, first off, thank you to the voters in Air and Shirley who voted on October 6th to approve the athletic fields project. That was a great, good number of people voted. Through the aggregate majority, the project was approved. So we thank everyone who continues to vote to support the district's growth mindset. As Dr. Ramona always talks about, we have a growth mindset to keep our district going forward. So second update here is, as we announced at our last meeting, the Norton Family Foundation has donated, or has pledged $500,000. We also, previous to that, had received two $1,000 pledges from organizations within Air. Over the last couple of days, we have received a pledge of $2,500 from another local business, and an alum contacted me this afternoon, actually. So he would like to donate $500. It's certainly was not he would have liked to do more, but that's what he felt he could do, and he was inspired by Mr. Norton's pledge. So it's a good thing to see that people have taken notice of the large donation. They've seen that the project's been approved, and they're starting. Some of the donations or pledges are coming in. As Dan talked about last week, when we talked to Shrewsbury, they said once you get that first one, then they start coming in. So we're hoping that that'll continue. So anyways, that's a total of $505,000. We thank all of our contributors for that, and we continue to look for more ways to reduce the taxpayer burden. So in your packets tonight, you do have a memo from Mr. Plunkett, which does cover some of the ways we can reduce we can apply these donations. Certainly some of them are will be one-time donations, others will be in the case of the Nortons, would be a multi-year donation. What we'll need to do is, once the project is officially approved through debt exclusions, and is finally approved, we as a school committee will need to determine how we want to apply these pledges as we can. So there's a number of options there. They all reduce the taxpayer burden. Some of them do so more than others. It's just basically the interest and that you do or do not pay. So if you notice in option 4, we borrow out of E&D and then replenish it every year. That was sort of, if you were to, it's right off the top. Other options are shorter notes that we would still require to pay interest, so the savings wouldn't be necessarily as great. But again, the big point is that you're looking at really $6.6 million is at this time what we'd be looking to borrow, and then as a maximum. We're not going to go more than, we would need to go more than that due to these generous pledges. So any questions on those items? All right, thank you. All right, so moving on to our second part of this, amend local restriction, motion to borrow for the fields update. Also in your packets, we do have the meeting minutes from October 4th, 2012, when the regional school committee voted to incur the debt from the high school. You'll notice that the language on page 2 that starts with the approval of the debt authorized by this vote shall not take effect does indeed discuss the language used by the regional school committee at the time as their sort of local restriction to not incur the debt exclusion process until the debt exclusion process was voted in the affirmative of both towns. We also, I did go back today and get the video from the meeting on August 15th when we chose to incur the debt and make the local amendment. I feel that it's only about a 6-minute part where we talk about the amendment and how we sort of discussed it and what the rationale behind it was. I think it's a good refresher so that we can all remember what happened, know what happened, and we're not going off our memories and what may or may not have happened. So we'll watch that in just a minute. What I'd like to do is in your packets you have 3 possible suggestions that Mr. Manley has put together for possible clarifying statements of our local amendment. And so if Mr. Manley, if you want to come up and just sort of give a brief overview of what you're looking for and how we need to get there, that would be outstanding.
Sure. Where would you like me to?
If you could stand right up there, that'd be great.
The job that we have, I might just give just a little bit of background on what we do for cities and towns and school districts and so on. When they want to borrow money is representing the governmental entities such as the school district, provide what's called a third-party legal opinion to the people that buy the bonds. Okay, so they're sort of lenders, if you will, not exactly in the typical bank sense, but what generally will happen is you'll approve some debt, the issuance of debt, and then more often than not in Massachusetts you have a competitive sale of the debt, right? And you offer that to the underwriters, investment banks, and the national marketplace. And when they bid on these things, they want to know that a firm such as mine that specializes in this sort of stuff will stand behind the debt and say, in a very flat way, that the debt has been properly approved and has been and it can't be paid back if it isn't. That's how case law works, which is kind of funny. But it has to be properly approved and properly issued, among other things. There are other things that we deal with, tax exemption and other things. But fundamentally, the law is such that burden is on the lenders to be satisfied that the debt has been properly approved so that they can expect to be repaid. That's sort of the essence of what we're trying to do. The environment, if you will, in which we render these opinions is based on an extremely high standard for giving the opinions. And to boil it all down, we look at the whole record and we have to decide that we can professionally render an opinion that is properly approved, and it's against the standard of, it would be unreasonable for a judge to take a look at what we look at and disagree with us. Not more likely than not that we have it right, or more probable than not, but that it would be unreasonable for a court to look at the record and conclude differently than we did. So it's a very high standard, and that's just what's required in the national capital markets for municipal bonds. So it's within that context that we think about the question today. As I said, there's sort of 2 points. There's the authorization of the debt, and then the issuance of the debt. So we need to be sure that both of those things can be done. We are confident, based on what we understand has happened today, although we haven't reviewed all the records for the conduct of the election, but we've advised along the way as to how it should go, and it appears that it has gone in such a manner that it's been approved by the voters and so forth, so that the debt is actually approved, authorized. The question is, can it be issued? And I think that's the part that we're wrestling with a little bit with respect to the amendment that was discussed at your meeting, at which time the debt was sent to the voters a month or two ago. The language is such that for us, we need to be able to look at those words and say, yes, those requirements that are part of that amendment have in fact been satisfied. And as it's worded anyway, we're not quite sure. And so what we need to do is see if there's a consensus among members of the committee as to sort of, particularly in light of the fact that it's been now approved of the district election, what is it that you'd like to see as the condition precedent to the issuance of the debt? To boil it down to its most simplest form. And so I think, that's sort of our objective, to sort of help you get to where you want to go. And so the question I think for you all to consider is, what is it that you could clarify here to make it clear that the conditions that you put on the issuance of the debt have been satisfied? Is it both communities shall have taken an affirmative vote at a debt exclusion? Is it that they shall have both taken affirmative votes at a debt exclusion and considered the project at a town meeting? Is it just that they should have considered it at a town meeting? For us, as a legal matter, the particulars are less important than just knowing what it is that we need to be able to check off on our list to be sure that they've happened.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Rishi.
So, to keep this straight in my head, if the town is going to go to an half override, generally that would start at the town meeting. And the town would say, we want to do this project based on 2.5 override. Then it would go to a ballot for the debt exclusion override.
Well, that's common in a town.
Is that common in the town?
That would be called sort of a contingent appropriation, right? So very common in a lot of towns when we approve this subject to the holding of the debt exclusion election. But that is actually not applicable in this case because the...
I know it isn't, I just was...
Yeah.
I think that's our history and that's what we understand, and then this gets a little confused.
Oh, pardon me, yes, I see. But the Chapter 59, Section 21C of the general laws sort of sets out that the selectmen actually are the ones that have the power to decide to hold place a ballot question on the warrant for a 2.5 override, debt exclusion, capital exclusion, what have you.
So then the district can request the selectmen, or they can request the selectmen in each town to do a 2.5 override vote, and then that would be valid, right?
Yes, although, you know, it's absolutely at the discretion of the selectmen in each town. They can decide if they want to or not, or whatever they like to do. But I think the distinction here is that the debt was approved under Chapter 71, Section 16N, or the district-wide vote that you just had. And in many cases, and I believe in your agreement for smaller amounts, you can actually do a vote like that, right? You don't have to do a vote like that. You can just say, all right, we're going to authorize the debt, notify the towns. The towns have a period of time during which they can call a town meeting to express approval or disapproval if they want to. That's kind of the usual mechanic that you see more often than not. But in this case, and so that would be how the debt would be approved, if you will. But here, what's happened is the election sort of took the place of that town meeting opportunity to vote yes or no. So then the question is, all right, it's authorized, but what will happen next? And I think that's really for you all to decide what you want to happen next prior to the issuance of the bonds.
What we would need to do to satisfy your office.
What I would recommend is that the present language of the amendment be reformed or revised. I hate to say amend the amendment, but right, but to just clarify what it is you'd like to say. For example, you could say, gee, we won't issue any of this debt until such time as the towns have each had successful debt exclusion votes, just as an example. Or you could get rid of it altogether if you wanted to. Or you could say, gee, we shouldn't issue any of this debt until town meetings have had an opportunity to at least discuss how best to afford the financial obligations that come from this debt. I mean, there's probably a whole host of things, and I wouldn't pretend to know what you want or what's best for the community as such, but I just need to be able to say, all right, I see what they placed here as the conditions in the issuance of the bonds, and I can find out if it happened or not. So it's kind of a narrow question, but it's kind of like a big discussion, it seems to me.
So let me play back what we discussed when we did the amendment on August 15th. And then hopefully maybe that can help guide us as well, so we can remember where we were at. Yes, go ahead.
So back at our last meeting, when Attorney Bressingham was talking to us, and I could have gotten confused because I think I was fried at that point, but you mentioned that the Board of Selectmen could put restrictions such as a town meeting on it if they wanted to. Did you say that, or did I just not?
Restrictions on
So on the debt exclusion vote. I guess my question is, if we do revise this language, is the only step or the next step the debt exclusion? Because now Shirley or both towns have it set up for town meeting. So what happens with that town meeting piece if we revise the language?
Well, if you revise the language to simply make a condition a successful debt exclusion in each town, then it would seem that there would be no need for a town meeting vote.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen is, as Attorney Manley mentioned, the body who sets the warrant for the debt exclusion election, and they're the ones that call for it.
I guess I must have misunderstood. I thought you said that the Board of Selectmen could put a town meeting as part of the restriction on the debt exclusion vote.
We were talking in a lot of hypotheticals.
Yeah, I know we were, and so I just wanted to clarify that.
Discussion, but
Yeah.
and again, this is conditioned on what you ultimately decide
Right,
to go
right.
with tonight. But if it were just the debt exclusion, then it would seem, and I would defer to Attorney Manley, but the election is the operable action in that town.
Perfect, thank you.
So Mr. Manley, I don't know if you recall, back in 2012, you came before a school committee, which 3 of us were on at the time, regarding our high school project.
That's pretty good. I lasted 9 years on my committee. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. And it goes back a few years before that. At that time, and I requested that certain minutes get put into our packet, unfortunately the wrong ones were put in. This is from April 2012 that I was looking forward. Evan Katz, our business manager at the time, brought you in. And you explained the process, which does not, the statutes, chapter 59, as you said, do not require a town meeting. And I think that's because it's the appropriating body is the school committee in this instance, because it's a regional project, not the town's appropriating body.
Yeah, that's really what's going on. If you look at the language about contingent votes and so forth, and actually just, I guess, backing up the ability to do a debt exclusion really is limited to cities and towns, right? They're the only ones that have property taxes that they actually levy. And so that's why it kind of comes down to the local appropriating authority under the definition in chapter 59 is for towns, the Board of Selectmen. So they're the ones that have to decide, gee, should we put one on the ballot or not?
But as far as the school committee replacing that town meeting, 2/3 vote.
Oh, yes. The authorization of the debt in the first instance is coming from the committee, subject to either the town meetings having a crack at it under chapter 7116B,
Right,
or the district-wide election.
which we had Saturday.
That's right. That's right. So it's a little bit different than what I think most folks are used to who are regular town meeting attenders.
So I need to give a major mea culpa as one of the spokespeople, primary spokespeople for this project is on behalf of the school committee. We have been under the false impression, as we recently learned last week through Attorney Bresnahan, I think he was speaking through information you provided him, the town meeting was going to be required because of that town process when there's as Joyce mentioned, there's the two-step town process. Forgetting, unfortunately, as well as a couple of my colleagues must have as well, because no one ever thought to bring it up, that this is what we did in 2012 when we passed the high school. It was simply debt exclusion ballot. And we added some language to say, unless this passes, you
Right.
don't go forward.
Right, right. More often than not, what you'll see with school committee votes in a region will be, we're authorizing the debt, but we're not going to go until the town's successfully achieve a debt exclusion vote. Just because, of course, thinking about, the sort of opportunities downstream to afford everything, most folks realize that at regional school committees that you don't want to sort of just, oh yes, fine, I'm done with the debt, and I'm not going to worry about how they raise it. So more often than not, folks will think about it like that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And I will apologize, this is kind of hard to hear, but there's a lot of background noise. But so we're at the point of the meeting where we're about to make the motion to incur the debt, and then we talk about the amendment afterwards.
Make a motion, the school committee votes outright debt for a new, for a renovated athletic field complex. Motion reads as follows: the Ayrshire Regional School District hereby appropriates the amount of $7,100,000 for the purposes of paying costs of designing, constructing, and originally equipping a renovated athletic field complex to be located at 141 Washington Street, Massachusetts, 01432, and for the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, the project. Being this appropriation, the district is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Chapter 71, Section 16N of the General Laws, and the district agreement as amended or pursuant to any other neighboring authority. Debt authorized by this vote of the committee shall be submitted to the registered voters of the district's member towns for approval at a district-wide election in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 71, Section 16 of the General Laws. Any further discussion?
I'd like to give
with the spirit, which I was thinking if that's the right.
The committee agrees not to execute a financial vehicle on the athletic fields complex without specific approval by town meetings in both their insurance. Some of the town meetings may go to that exclusion, and I know $7.1 million seems like a lot, but it goes basically, I mean, the math easy, 4 to air and 3 to Shirley. He just spent all that on 2 fire personnel years. If Shirley has received NTI funding 21 out of 22 years, you know, so they may take a look at it, air may take a look at it, you know, for the amount of money that we're talking here, that exclusion will may not be necessary. They can take a look at their entire picture. So they just, that's how we did go, like, you know what, we're going to go down this road, so go anyway. Or if they want to have a debt exclusion, then we have to wait for the debt exclusion. But we'll let them figure out how you want to pay for it. And if they come to an agreement at the town meeting or whatever they want to do there, then we're just fine. It just sets out front for them that even though we have a right after passage of the list of goals, this said that we're not going to do that. It's not our intent to do it anyway. It just puts it in motion. I think that's what we did when we went to high school. We added it to motion there.
So do we want to limit it to town meeting or somehow word it so we have approval? Well, do you need town meeting approval if it's not excluded? So I just don't want to limit it.
That was another problem I had with it as well. It's like if the selectmen can, and I don't know this, if they have their own authority to say, we've got a way to finance this, I don't think that's the
It's enough money in these towns that it's going to go to something.
Could we say town meeting or whatever approval process the town deems necessary for action? I just, again, I like to do, I want to make that have to call town meeting when they might not have to.
Well, they're going to have a town meeting, they're pure like this tonight.
I'm perfectly fine with the spirit of what you're saying, I just don't want to limit, cause a town meeting that might not be required if they decide to fund it.
They have 2.5 months basically.
I can't think of anything where they would, right? Town meeting gets to approve expenditures, so I have to think of the original, so I can't think of any other.
I think we expended for the amount of money that we're talking about, even if they decided to do it internally by other means, they would put that in front of the people.
They would have to.
And let them decide.
That's, I'll accept the.
All right, so we will take a motion, we will take a vote on the amendment first. Mr. Please read it one more time. If you don't mind.
No, the committee agrees not to execute a financial vehicle on the athletic fields complex without specific approval by town meetings in both their insurance.
Thank you. All those in favor of Mr. Pinckney's amendment at the very end of the original motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So now we will take the original motion with Mr. Quigley's amendment at the end. Any further discussion? No? Yes, sir.
But we come to vote on moving forward to the athletic fields, just a couple of things I'd like to say. Clearly, I'm going to just place another people with respect to the design of the fund. But the one place that we're all that I'd like everybody to know is that the current configuration and situation that we have for our athletic field makes it impossible to do a position that we're like the athletic field renovation of some design absolutely needs to be done. Right? And I'm going to vote in favor of moving this forward, even though I voted against it
those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you all very much for that. We'll proceed.
Thank you for your patience. I do appreciate that it was long and the audio wasn't particularly great. But I think it reminds us of what we were trying to accomplish that night and hopefully helps us to come up with a revised amendment going forward. So with that, is there any discussion?
Mr. Ford?
Yes, sir.
If I may, seeing the April 12th minutes from 2012 that I requested to be in the packet didn't make it, may I read a passage from those?
Yes, please.
So, under ongoing business, building project voting process. Mr. Katz announced the presence of financial advisors who agreed to attend tonight's meeting to offer their expertise and who are very familiar with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 71, subsection 16N regarding the incurring of the debt. Peter Frazier and Abby Jeffers of First Southwest Capital Company and Richard Manley of Edward Wildman Palmer LLP, parentheses bond counsel, who are on hand to provide some background and clarify steps between now and the funding of the building project. A lengthy discussion ensued regarding a number of topics, such as the factors that affect debt service payments, the need for a funding/payment mechanism, and commitment on the part of the towns in order to sell bonds, the voting process used in many communities, the authority of regional school districts versus towns, and the 120-day timeline with the MSBA. Mr. Kelly summarized the process that the regional school district would use next school year to vote on the middle high school project. First, a 2/3 majority of the regional school committee must agree to incur the debt for the building project. Second, a regional vote in both Air and Shirley will take place simultaneously by ballot within an 8-hour time frame. And 3, if the regional vote is successful, then a debt exclusion vote would be held in each community. A negative debt exclusion vote in either community would stop the project. Mr. Manley clarified that only the boards of selectmen can call a ballot election. A town meeting in both towns is not needed, as it would have no legal effect with regard to Prop 2.5. Mr. Quinney expressed the need for the regional agreement to contain specific language stipulating what the process will be for this project, as well as for future projects. Mr. Manley responded that the regional school committee can specify in the language of the regional vote to improve the incurring of debt that the regional vote is subject to a successful debt exclusion vote in each community. Mr. Quincy maintained that the agreement should have the ability to, pardon me, changing pages, codify more restrictive changes and absolute separation of the vote process is necessary to protect the community that does not pass the debt exclusion. The committee generally felt the language is not necessary. Mr. Manley stated that every big project conversation surrounds affordability. Often general language is better than explicit language with regard to matters such as these. Otherwise, districts could end up with unintended consequences under a different set of circumstances. So speaking for myself, and what I think we heard in that meeting is we wanted to do the same processes for the high school, make assurances that neither town gets stuck having to pay debt that it wasn't approved through a debt exclusion in their town. I think that clarifies that. Also, my opinion is follow the statutes. We've been having discussions about trying to do special things for certain constituencies, and every time you start bringing up one of these one-offs, it just creates problems, which I think we heard council on that back in 2012, and we wanted to avoid that. So again, just speaking for myself, if we just take the debt exclusion ballot, if the selectmen in each town agree to put it forward, put similar language as we did in 2012, which is unless this passes in each town, the project doesn't go forward. Again, speaking solely for myself, what I thought, what I heard is the will of the committee was also, that was the spirit of what we were trying to do. The town meeting discussion ensued because, again, mea culpa from me as one of the spokesmen for the project, I was telling people there'd be a 2-step town meeting, then debt exclusion ballot process, because that was my understanding in Chapter 59. Forgetting what happened in 2012 and the regional school law puts a wrinkle in there that town meeting process is not required, as was stated in what I just read. So that's my statement, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. I appreciate that, and I apologize for not having those correct minutes in there. I apologize.
No.
Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Dan, I'm sorry, I didn't remember either. I was one of the people back then. There were committees and subcommittees and meetings and public forums and all kinds of things that made it difficult for us with the discussions we've had the past couple of meetings to keep it all straight. I'm going to talk a little more about the intent piece. I think through the past couple of meetings, our intent, all of us, is what I'm hearing is really the same. We want people to be able to be informed, and we want people to be able to vote. And while Mr. Quinty did speak about town meeting and felt that that was the best way to do it because it's always been done that way, I don't think that's good enough. I know it's not good enough for me. I really don't think that's good enough for the community because times are not the way they always have been. It's difficult as a parent of young kids to get out to a town meeting. It's also difficult for people who are caring for aging parents to get out to a town meeting. There's limitations to a town meeting that don't exist with going to the town for an 8-hour vote, because people can still do an absentee ballot, but you can't send somebody to represent you at a town meeting. So, you know, again, we want as many people to be informed as public forums. There's committee meetings, there's coffees with the superintendent. There's a lot of ways to get the information, social media. Just getting information and only having town meeting to have that discussion is so limiting in my mind to a lot of people in the community. So I really feel that we can't be jumping through many hoops to get to where we need to be, which is to really hear as many voices as we can. And that's my 2 cents.
Yes, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
So just want to remind everybody, again, my new mantra, follow the statutes. There is no place in the statutes for a town meeting in this process. We didn't have one in 2012. We shouldn't, we have to take a vote. We shouldn't have one for this. We also are starting the process of talking about about elementary schools, whether it be one in one town, one in the other, or regional. Those are going to go through the same process. Now, because of some changes we're considering the regional agreement, there may be a 16D town meeting to approve the school committee borrowing for that. But the town meeting, again, would only be part of the school committee's borrowing process. It would not be part of the debt exclusion. It's simply not part of the debt exclusion law. So why would we want to add something in that's just going to confuse voters? We confused ourselves. And we certainly want to set expectations for a future school vote that we're going to go down a different process than we did for the high school and that what I feel we should be doing for this project. So 16D requires a town meeting. In the current regional agreement, we do not do that. We do a 16N, which is a ballot. We did that Saturday. It passed in the combined vote. So again, follow the statutes is my advice to the committee, and there is no town meeting in the statutory process for this.
Mr. O'Keefe?
John O'Keefe, Chair of the Finance Committee in Shirley. I want to remind everybody that the vote did not pass in Shirley. It did pass in the aggregate vote, but it did not pass in Shirley. I also want to remind people that the analogy that a regional school has 3 prongs, like a 3-legged stool. Mr. Gleason, was your analogy. I think it's a very good analogy. That you don't want to go forward unless all 3 legs are in agreement. Right? So the technicality of whether it goes to town meeting or not, okay, is an important one. It's been discussed before, but it's one vehicle of many, as you indicated. There's no single vehicle that educates everybody. In the athletic fields issue, okay, from a resident of Shirley perspective, even though a committee met for 18 months, and I recognize that, but there was very little communication about what was occurring in the town of Shirley. There was a meeting in May that very few people attended. I would say less than 24 people attended. And that was the only meeting scheduled for the residents of Shirley. There was not another one. There was another one in air, but not for the residents of Shirley and in Shirley. The Finance Committee had a meeting to discuss it, but it was not a formal meeting, a presentation by the school committee of what was going on. It was a fairly brief meeting, and actually I think more people from air attended, from the committee and the supporters than not. And there was very little communication in the papers up until an article basically I instigated, that started some discussion in the paper. But before then, there was very little. There's been lots of confusion. The issue still is what does the minor community, because Shirley is the minor community in numbers, even though in this particular case, surprisingly, more people voted for Shirley than in Air on this one. What is the role of the minor community in a two-town regional school? If the minor community has a sense of no voice, and that's what occurs, I'm being very blunt, that the town has, at least people I talk to feel that they have no voice, because even if the vote failed, which it did in Shirley, it goes forward. So then the amendment Mr. Quinty indicated at least the town meeting will have some say. I do agree it needs the ballot. It cannot exclude. The ballot is the most people typically vote at a town meeting. But at a town meeting, you have a broader discussion than in any of the information sessions that have had. It allows that kind of flow because it is a traditional vehicle of communication in a town. I'm not disputing social media. People go on. This is a generational issue, for sure. I recognize that. But there's no one form. But at the end of the day, you need to hold what is the voice of the people in both towns. Are they together in what's going to occur? If there's not, that would be a significant problem going forward and cause a rift that would be very problematic. So I encourage more communication nonetheless. The commitment that a town meeting vote will take place in some form that will have a say in this project. That was publicly admitted. It was basically mentioned in several of the forums that were present by multiple people from the school committee. We've mentioned it because it was our understanding that it was really, apart from the requirements of 16A, that it would basically require two things, several things, three things. The vote of the school committee, then it would require the vote of the ballot that took place, and we understood it was the majority of the aggregate, we did understand that. Then there would be a town meeting vote, and then there would be a debt exclusion vote, ballot vote. So it was my understanding anyway, and on the multiple meetings I had on this issue, was it was those three prongs were the mechanics of how this was going to take place. I do understand it's not as neat and clean as bond council would appreciate, because it does add a third obstacle. But that was my understanding. That is most people's understandings that have attended these public forums, I believe. And so while it's Monday morning quarterbacking, well, we didn't want it to be that way, but the wording of the amendment is very black and white. It's very clear. And that's how it's been interpreted. That has been the way it has been explained. It's been noted that way. To change it now, 3 to 4 days before the town meeting in Shirley is problematic, I guess.
I was just going to, I wasn't part of the committee. Mr. O'Keefe was talking about a lack of communication. Can you fill me in on what modes of communication there were? Because I saw things posted, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, every meeting of the subcommittee has been publicly posted with no attendees. Every time we talk about it at school committee, there's been 1 or 2 attendees at the most. We did do public forums in Air and Shirley. The concept that a public forum is done, the public forums in each town were specific in the tax impact of each town, but otherwise they were the same. The final public forum was done here so that we could have a tour of the facilities. It was not a slight against the town of Shirley. It was, to be brutally honest, we have attendance, as Mr. O'Keefe said, we've had attendance issues with people coming, and to do it a second night was going to be difficult, especially during that time of year with all the open houses going on. We were able to barely sneak it in as it was. There's been a Facebook page that's been going since, last summer sometime, summer 2017. The school district has put it in the weekly update, I believe, on the website, the school district's website.
The field committee had a webpage.
Yep, the field committee had a webpage.
So I would
So every
say,
time we had forums, I wrote press releases to Sentinel Enterprise, Lowell Sun, Neshoba Valley Voice, although unfortunately a lot of people don't read newspapers today, but there's nothing we can do with that. I attempted, and I did get them published in an NBB and Sentinel Enterprise for both the May forums and for the September forum. So there was plenty of communication.
There was a reporter who wrote an article, let's see, for the September meeting.
APAC recorded, and we publicized the recording for people on social media and
so
websites.
it's my educated guess, with all the things that you just talked about, you reached more people than the amount of people that will attend a town meeting.
Can I respond? As a member of the Finance
Well,
Committee.
hold on.
So,
Lisa first.
So, Mr. O'Keefe, I realize you were a member of the Finance Committee back when the region was formed in 2012. But there needs to be an understanding that you're in a regional school district. We're not making stuff up as we go. There are codified laws by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts of how these things occur. And I believe there's some responsibility on behalf of each community that's going to be a member of the regional school district to understand the laws and rules of being part of the regional school district, which in this debt process, we've outlined tonight. You also brought up the history of the talk about town meeting and debt exclusion process. I took a mea culpa twice earlier in the meeting. I was one of the spokespeople who said there will be a town meeting. I said that because my understanding was there'd be a two-step town process like happens if you were to build a police station or buy a new fire truck. In a regional school district, as we've heard tonight from Mr. Manley, that process is different. Where the two-thirds vote is a vote of this committee, which happened actually 5-0 with one person not in attendance. So every meeting we have is a regional meeting. Place it takes place in is immaterial. Air people, and my wife, who was here earlier, went to the Shirley Public Forum. She's an air person. She showed up at the Shirley Public Forum. We're a regional school district. The main reason we had the meeting here and only here in September was because we're going to do a tour and give people a sense of the fields. They're physically here, where Shirley kids go to high school. So Shirley parents would have had to come over here. If there was something happening at the Shirley Middle School, the Air Shirley Regional Middle School, I would expect to have to leave Air to go to the middle school to hear about what the project or whatever was happening at the middle school. So this concept of Air versus Shirley in minor town, it's a regional school district that has been since 2011. Until the surprise of communities haven't gotten their heads around that quite yet. It's been a number of years. Thank you.
I'm not disputing anything about the law. I absolutely recognize 16N. I absolutely recognize what the regional agreement says, but that's not the issue. The issue, as far as I understand, is what is communicated. There was an amendment passed, and what does the word say? When you ask about communication, I have been a member of the Finance Committee for the last 3 years. I have received no invitation, personally, via email or whatever, no invitation to any discussion at all, even the May 31st meeting. I heard about the May 31st meeting by a neighbor of mine who's a board and selectman. He said, aren't you going to this meeting? I said, what meeting? So I went. That's what I mean by lack of communication. So, and I feel I'm somewhat educated as a Finance Committee member. I've been chair just for the last few months. And when I talk to people in Shirley, their lack of awareness is even greater. So that's what I mean by lack of awareness. I'm not saying it should have been done differently. It's past. All I'm saying now is that this concept and commitment that there will be something in the town meeting, a vote at the town meeting will have an impact. That's what I'm talking about. It's in a written amendment that's been distributed, it's been discussed, it's been reaffirmed, and that's all I'm talking about. That implied, not even implied, it indicated this three-step process, which is beyond the requirements of 16N. I totally understand that. And I even, last time I was here, I acknowledged the graciousness of the school committee to allow that, because it was over and beyond. But you made that commitment now. And so consequently, to change it 4 days before a town meeting, I think is problematic. I still do.
1 second. Wait, did you want to do?
Do we know what the articles are on the town meeting?
We do. We do. We have the air articles here. We have the Shirley article, which I believe will be amended. I met with,
But the article as it stands,
It's problematic. It calls for a two-thirds vote, which is not.
it's not, it's only
right,
majority.
It's not.
it has the incorrect amount of the borrowing, and it says the town is going to be issuing the debt, and it's not, and then the other piece was the two-thirds votes.
Aaron and Shirley have very different,
Our town manager is here from here. Robert, you have your wording?
well,
Mr.
Mr.
Pombrian, you're being asked a question.
I'm sorry, Mr.
I was
Joyce has a
wondering
question.
what your wording is on your town meeting warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Manley.
And
Mr. Chairman, members of the school committee, Dr. Malone, to Mr. Schutz's question. The Air Board of Selectmen approved the warrant for the Air Town meeting which will take place on October 22nd, on October 2nd. The language of that article, which is Article 11, is the last article on there. That article was written in consultation with our town council, in consultation with our bond council, with the intent that that article, it's the opinion of the Board of Selectmen, myself, our council, that our article would meet the requirements of the school committee's amendment of August the 15th. We had the luxury, unlike Shirley, to catch that and to address that. I understand in talking to my colleague, and I'm not speaking for Shirley, but Mr. McGovern, the warrant was printed in more of advance because the Shirley town meeting is a week before ours. The article is not the same as the air one, but that council, we have the same council, KP Law, that the council met with the Board of Selectmen and my counterpart and prepared amendment language to make that article correct. That's assuming that things proceed with the amendment from the school committee of August 15th.
in your article will state, how is the article stated? Is it approving the project, subject to override, and then go back to the ballot?
It's worded, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of
Reducted in the
me.
ands, ifs, and buts.
Yes, it's worded to allow the discussion based on the intent of the August 15th amendment by the school committee. And it is the intent of the Air Board of Selectmen, and Selectman Livingston is here with me tonight, to call a debt exclusion ballot. Where in air, our feeling is we'd like to coordinate that and surely be at the same point. But the Board of Selectmen in air are prepared to call, at the appropriate time, call the debt exclusion election. But we were able to, for our warrant, we believe, prepare an article to meet that amendment of this committee. Now, if this committee chooses to do something different, of course, we'll advise the Board of Selectmen in the town and prepare accordingly.
Thank you.
So, I guess one of my comments to you, Mr. O'Keefe, with all due respect. So this whole process has been confusing for our voters, hasn't it? We
Yes.
thought we were going to have 2 ballots on Saturday, we had 1. So things have changed as they've gone along, as we've learned information, as we found out technicalities that we weren't following with the 2 ballots, and again, now with town meeting. Shirley had 744 voters. I'm pretty sure you won't have 744 people at town meeting.
we will.
So I think people know, and they're speaking. And I would feel very bad if people in Shirley don't think they have a voice, because 744 of them went and voted on Saturday, and they'll be able to do the same thing when we have a ballot for funding. I just don't understand why we're pushing so hard for town meeting when 744 people in your town already know about this project and went and voted. I have a hard time with that.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Manley and Mr. President, perhaps an unfair hypothetical, but attorneys get hypotheticals all the time. So as I read from the April 2012 minutes, that the town meeting is no place legally in this process. Could someone who is a supporter of the project and felt that we followed the statutes for 16N and then an upcoming debt exclusion, Sue the school district for not following due process here because we stopped after a town meeting vote that has no legal bearing on this process. Yeah, probably an unfair hypothetical, but if you would mind taking a stab at it.
Well, this is precisely the problem that we have in bond opinion, because somebody could do that. I don't, you know, and the difficulty about the language is there are various interpretations from the language that was used. For example, it says not execute a financial vehicle. Does that mean that before we issue and every time we renew short-term financing, we need to have a town meeting? I don't think that's what anybody intended, for sure. But someone could read it that. In fact, well, I didn't read it like that, but I showed it to my partner, who's a hell of a lot smarter than I am. And that's the first thing he said, well, what are you going to do with this? Do you have to have a town meeting vote every time you do short-term financing? And so that is precisely the problem that we have here. It is awfully difficult, given its language today, to say precisely what happened and what was the significance of each of those things. The debt is not before the town meeting in a technical sense. Town meetings are certainly free to take up whatever they want. I guess the question for you all is, what is the significance of that, or is the condition really the debt exclusion? That's all you want? Or maybe you want folks to discuss it at town meeting, but not have it part of this process, or maybe you want to effectively give yourself a 16N approval process, and by virtue of this language, a 16B process too.
Yes, you're right. That's going to be how it's read.
But there are various ways to look at this, and so that's why you guys get to sit over there, because you get to decide what you want.
But I don't know if we have a copy of the flyer we've been handing out handy, but on the back side of that where it had the voting dates, it did say the town meeting would be held on the 15th in Shirley, 22nd in Air, and it would require a 2/3 vote. So that's, again, language that says what we thought was happening was what a town process would be for, say, building a new fire station, not a regional school facility. So it was a honest mistake. And I think that flyer, we've handed out hundreds of them around town that says it's going to be a 2/3 vote, shows it was an honest mistake. It says a 2/3 vote is not required. Even the language that the towns are suggesting now, if we did go forth with town meeting, it would be simple majority. So it was an honest mistake in good faith. And again, I think what we heard is the spirit of this was to make sure the debt exclusion was passed before any borrowing was done, and we put a financial burden on the town. And the debt exclusion process is a ballot, and that is all.
Oh, yes, Mr. Quincy, sorry.
No one in this room is any smarter than they were 6 weeks ago, but we're a lot more educated about how these things get funded than we were 6 weeks ago. And I actually agree with Dan on following the letter of the law on future stuff. I think that clarifies things a great deal. The problem now becomes what the words are. That's the problem. When Dr. Malone came to my office because I had to sign the warrant, she put it in front of me, and I read it, and I said, there's no reference to town meeting approval. I said, I'm going to sign it, but I need you to go back to check with the attorney to make sure that that amendment is still in force. She went back, she checked, and said it's still in force. That's why we had the election. We told, I know many people on both sides of the vote that they are expecting a town meeting review of this project. That's what we put out there. What everybody's intent was, I don't know, but town meeting says town meeting, so there's going to be town meeting, it's not going to be 2/3. The fact that it's on that piece of paper wasn't issued by the school committee. School committee didn't issue anything up or down with respect to this project. Me putting that forward, I expected a voice at town meeting. We had multiple forums where we said there would be specific town meeting approval required for this. People voted yay or nay expecting town meeting approval. We didn't have 2 ballots because we didn't make a 35-degree window and we got challenged. If we now remove this after the fact, I can guarantee a challenge, which will severely impact. The last thing I want to do is put the funding of this project at risk, right? The funding of the project is approved for the 7-1. Now we have to go through the wickets that were created. We'll have other projects in the future, and we'll do it probably better than we've done this. But people voted with the expectation that there would be a town meeting. And if we change that now, their vote, we disenfranchise their votes, and that puts us in not a good light, I would say, for legal reasons. I do not want to put the funding at risk. This is now a wicket that we have to walk through. Whether people intend it or not, doesn't matter. It said town meeting. On the upside, you don't have to meet the 2/3 from the latest that I've heard. It's a simple majority. But it is now a path that we have to go down.
Yes, sir.
Again, unfair hypothetical, but the towns could basically make that vote any hurdle they wanted to, right? Because there's, again, nothing in the statutory process. They can say it has to pass at 90. I know they're not doing that, right? But the simple majority, because we're not doing anything done by the statute in this,
Well, there's,
it could be at any hurdle they choose to play.
there is law with respect to the governance of town meetings. And things are a majority unless the statutory language pertaining to what they're approving, say, a borrowing, for example, requires more than a majority. I suppose that a town could, if they wanted to, amend their bylaw to say everything needs to be unanimous. Could do that, and that would actually have a force law if they wanted to do that. But I don't think I don't believe there's any authority for them to do that with regard to a particular item on a particular warrant on a particular day. It would require, more foundation.
But still, what I heard earlier is there is potential for, if we don't follow the statutes here, to be challenged. I don't know what the legal basis of the hypothetical challenge Mr. Cookie's talking about would be, because if we follow the statutes, we're safe. If we don't follow the statutes, when we open ourselves up to trouble.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
Welcome to the club.
And sometimes when I talk it out loud, I confuse myself, okay? So, right now, right this minute, as it stands, on October 23rd in the town of Air, whatever that Monday is, we have town meeting. The last article on the warrant is the debt exclusion question, okay? So basically, at town meeting, we would be informing town meeting, you voted on October 6th, the region approved the field project. Now we're asking you if you want the debt exclusion, which would minimize your impact, or say no to the debt exclusion, which would maximize your impact. So we would be asking town meeting, I'm pretty sure that they would go for the debt exclusion because it would minimize the impact. And then, because, and we were right there with you as far as thinking that this had to be, call the election to go forward to say, okay, the town, we want to make sure that you're all involved and you understand how it's going to impact the taxes. So some of my confusion is you just made this comment about how that there was going to be a review of the project at town meeting, but that's where I'm getting lost because I don't recall there ever being a discussion that we were going to review the project because you've already voted on the project. Town meeting was simply to vote on the funding. Low impact, high impact.
Can I ask you just to expand on that a little bit? So the question is, basically you're asking voters yes to a debt exclusion or no to a debt exclusion, correct?
Right, because, right before the election,
Yeah.
there was going to be 2 ballots.
Yep.
You walk up, pick your ballot up, yay or nay to the field. Now, numerous people, when they were asked me, how do you feel about the field? I said, I think you should go for it. It's needed. We all know it's needed. And there were people like, I really don't like this amount of money. Who does? Okay? So I ended up saying to him, as I've said for years, you got to vote how you see fit. But when you get that second ballot, it's my recommendation that you vote yes, in case the first one approves, you want to minimize your impact. Okay? So even if, which I didn't, if I had voted no, I would have still voted yes on the debt exclusion because it would better impact me. And then we would have gone to town meeting to kind of reaffirm that, which we would have at that point had the two ballots happened on October 6th, said it was approved. Anybody have any questions? You're basically reaffirming, again, vote yes for the low impact or vote no and have a high impact, okay? So if you didn't want to have a vote debt exclusion, would that have affected different ways, okay? So, but I don't recall us ever saying that there was going to be a project review at town meeting. Why would you need a project review at town meeting? You've already done the project review, you've already voted on it, now you're just voting on funding. And I feel even the people who may have voted no would still vote yes on the debt exclusion. Because one, they would be looking at the election results to say the region wants this. So the majority wants this, and I want the lower impact. So you've confused me with this field project because I'm not expecting any type of field project presentation at town meeting. So that's where I'm getting a little bit confusion. So the unfortunate part is right now we do have on the warrant. And now, there were numerous hands in that mistake, okay? The Board of Selectmen to be included, okay? But now if we try to amend that, we've now removed the debt exclusion question from the October 6th ballot. Now we're going to say at October 23rd, no, we're not going to ask you the debt exclusion question. We're now going to go in front of the ballot. And quite honestly, that's going to confuse the voters. So would it be better to, and I'm asking, would it be better to just continue with what we currently have in place? Because I can tell you what I would be standing there in front of town meeting saying, the voters want this. Go for the lower impact on your taxes. Vote yes on the debt exclusion. And then we reaffirm it with the election. Now at the ballot, of course, then you run the risk because 700 people could show up and they'll say no. You know, but I think we all kind of understand that, at least in my head, town meeting is not the overriding authority on the debt exclusion question because to be honest with you, 60 people could show up. And that's not fair for 60 people to be making the decision for 700, 1,000. But it is an opportunity for some people to get clarifying questions also. And then be able to feed to them, this is when we're going to be calling the election, which I believe would be, it has to be at least 35 days. So I believe that after the October 23rd, so it would probably be the first Tuesday in November, the Board of Selectmen would then call the election for the debt exclusion ballot question. And I don't, now in my head all this makes sense and I hope that what I just said makes sense to all of you. I think I'm less confused a little bit, but I just wonder if we're just going to add to what kind of sounds like a comedy of errors if we try to re-maneuver and amend and not go to town meeting and then just go to a ballot because this could cause more confusion. And you are, because everybody's always got a conspiracy theory, you're going to have those who are going to feel like you're trying to undermine something. But I agree with you, the town meeting can't be the governing authority on a debt exclusion question.
Before you sit, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, go to town meeting, people vote no on debt exclusion, then you're funding it how?
Well, that is a conundrum. That is a conundrum, and that would run a risk. I agree. I feel can tell you I feel confident that it would pass, but yes, there is that risk. And then that begs the question, would we still be able to go to the ballot if town meeting says no? So, again, we have like what has become this little comedy of errors that no matter where direction we go, we're going to have some type of an issue. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You were looking.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to thank you for your comments. And I don't want to put extra on someone, but couldn't we just still proceed at town meeting with a presentation about our plan with no vote, just to inform voters about what's going on, but there's no vote, and you're just out answering questions if that's your vehicle for getting information out there?
So then still has the debt exclusion?
Yeah, then it would go to the ballot after, but it's not
Another 2 steps after, so, right, that's what you said.
I'm saying we
I thought it was 2 steps in.
no, I'm saying town meeting, we would take language that says that the town meeting is not required. We're going to follow 71N. But because we've already, advertised at town meetings, we would go to present on the project, answer questions, but there'd be no vote on it. It would just merely be almost like a public forum. And I'm not putting that on anyone, but I'm just wondering if that's an option, that there's no action taken at town meeting, but it's still a forum for people, and then we have our ballot like we normally would.
Yeah, there's no problem doing something like that. Whatever you decide to do, again, it's just a question of, we're not going to issue the bonds until something happens, or something and something else happens. Affirmative votes in town meeting, followed by affirmative votes at the debt exclusion vote about, or any combination that you feel good about. We just need to be clear as to what it is should happen.
Yes, Mike.
So to Chair Livingston and to you, Mr. Manley, so what I thought I understood earlier, you're the only people who can call a debt exclusion ballot, which is the only step that's required legally in this process. So if there was a negative town meeting vote, you could still, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Manley, go forward with a debt exclusion, but now then you're the ones who put at risk the wrath of the people who thought that they had just stopped things. But because the town meeting has no legal basis, you could still go forward if you wanted to. That, and correct, I'm not going to state that emphatically as an attorney because I'm not. I'm asking, that's my understanding, is that accurate?
The debt is not, as we said, has already been approved. It's not before the meeting as such, except to the extent that your amendment suggests otherwise. That's why we want to kind of clear that up, because do you intend the affirmative vote at town meeting? Maybe the affirmative vote is subject to the debt exclusion occurring a little later, or do you want to have, something different like the holding of an informational item at town meeting, followed by an affirmative vote at the ballot or something like that? To make it clear as to sort of what it is that you want as a condition prior to the issuance of the bond. So certainly no harm in something like that. But as long as everyone appreciates that going in, that, well, we're not taking a vote on this as such because it's already been handled at the district-wide election, but rather we want to let you all know about this because you have an important function next, which is to consider what you want to do on the debt exclusion. Particularly if you decide that we're not going to issue the bonds unless both of the towns take affirmative votes for the debt exclusion on the project.
Oh, yes, Ms. Gallo.
So I'm new to all of this, and I'm new to the town of Shirley, but my thought as a parent and as a voter is that I would understand if I went to a town hall meeting that was still being held, and I was told at the meeting, look, we're having this meeting for information purposes. Let's take a tally and see how many people would vote, are excited about this, how many people are not, about the debt exclusion, are there any questions, are there any concerns? And you could explain to people like myself who are just coming in, who really are kind of confused on all of this, on how I should be voting. I'm not confused, I got some help the other day, but for people like myself, And then that vote wouldn't hold any weight. It would be more so that way the town of Shirley could say, whoa, 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 why are all of you people not voting for this? This is my money too, these are my kids, we've already approved it, and kind of spark debate within the town. And then the amendment would just say that the ballot is the controlling function for whether this goes forward or not. Because I think that would help satisfy people in Shirley who maybe feel like they're not being listened to on either side, especially when it comes to funding. I know that was a big issue in Shirley. Lots of seniors on fixed income were concerned. So that would be a really nice area for us to air kind of our grievances and have a discussion, but then so it would satisfy what the voters thought was going to happen to a certain extent, and then the ballot would just be controlling, and that would be the statute. And and I agree with you, working in the legal field, just stick to what the law says. Is that helpful at all? Or?
I think it is, actually, and one thing I've been asking Mr. DeForge is, if we do proceed to town meeting, and whether there's a vote or not a vote, it's informational, if we do go and there's an article, that the town's attorney explain this to the town meeting body, so that people understand what the actual law is, and what it isn't, because we've botched it, so nobody wants us to try to explain it again. And I think the town meeting would deserve that legal explanation to understand the differences when you're doing a regional school district capital project and voting on that versus a town-based project. So yeah, I would just add to what you said, if that is something we go forward with, that we also have an opening statement by the attorney to explain what is the process here. And that might help then people who were expecting a vote who may not get a vote to understand, well, okay, we were informed incorrectly before, the legal statutes are that there's no bearing of the town meeting vote.
If it was just explained to me, this is what we had thought, this is what we would do if we were getting a fire truck, a fire station, new police officers, whatever, but because it's a regional school district, this isn't the way that we go about it. This is how we go about it, but we want you all to be heard, we want this discussion, we want to know what you think about this, we want to explain this. I would be thrilled to have that, especially because now I understand how this process works. So when another funding project comes up, for another school or for another athletic field or for anything else, now I know the process, and especially having young children, I hope there's going to be a lot more things like this going on and a lot more discussion. So the voter, that would make me super happy, and I wouldn't begrudge any of you, especially working in the legal field, for not having, all of the information right at the time for a regional school district.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I don't know if this helps, but our article on our town meeting warrant specifically states that there will be a ballot question also.
It has to be a ballot.
Simple majority vote required.
Or 2%.
Right. But it specifically states that, yeah, we're asking town meeting, and then it's specifically going to the ballot. So, again, I'm getting confused.
Yes.
So it sounds to me like, I'm sorry, I forget your name and introduce yourself.
No, Ms. Scott.
Oh, yeah, Michelle Stafford.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. It sounds like what Michelle was, there may be a tally taken, but it has no bearing, because you're saying in that you're going to a ballot regardless of what the town meeting voted.
Simple majority vote required. It specifically says in the article, basically we're letting you know how you feel, any questions, and we're going to the ballot.
That would seem to solve our requirement.
We need it both times, we have to be consistent.
No, I don't disagree that we need to make sure that we're word for word on these going forward, that they're exactly the same. Yes, Patricia.
Mr. O'Keefe, do you know the wording in Shirley now? Is it going to follow
No,
the air one? And it's too bad that people are...
I know the article is written is not going to be the one that's going to be amended. I inquired for what the wording was today. I saw it at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, but I didn't have the hard copy. it's reworded, it sounds similar to A. I believe they're coordinating the article with that, so I believe it's probably
So
something.
we can go with that. based on the laws.
It was not intending that the ballot question not take place. It was, the way I understood it, it's both ends.
No, but I'm, having understood where the air selectmen were coming from and how they were going to handle it at town meeting, as much as I don't want to say this, I do feel more comfortable that we're sort of, the hurdle is not quite as high at all, or it doesn't exist. But, I don't know.
Well, it also should satisfy what I recall hearing last week from Mr. Quinty was town meeting in Shirley is an informational forum. People get information there, so we would be providing that service.
Jim, do you want to say anything?
I mean, it's going to come down to what we said. I mean, the whole thing obviously is all mucked up. In many hands, I mean, between the town of Air and the town of Shirley and the school committee, all this stuff got all mucked up. So usually what happens when you get in that situation, you figure out, what can I stand on? And the only thing that matters here, now the thing that matters most isn't $7.1 million. It isn't the athletic team. It's your word. The word is out there. The words said that have to be specific town meeting approval. Is it what people thought because we didn't have a clear understanding of the laws? That's what the word said. We had forums. That's what the word out there was. There was going to be a district-wide vote where everything was mixed up. You had to get town meeting approval in both towns, and then you had to get it over. That's the word that was out there. Clearly doesn't follow all what's in the statute. We did a very poor job of that from the get-go. And it won't happen again. But this is where we are. But now, how can we get anyone to listen to us again if they come to a forum and we say something, and then after a vote already happens, we change the parameters? You can't do it. We went out there in the forum before anything happened and said, this is what the process is. Now we have an affirmative vote for the district, and the next step is now in question, even though we advertised. That level of confidence is very important to us. We rely on that confidence for everything we do and say, for all our operational budgets. They have to say, they don't always like what we say, but they believe what we say. We mean it when we say it. That's the thing that has to come out of this. That's why I feel it has to go to the town meetings and pass the majority in the town meetings. And then go to the debt exclusion. That's what we put out there. Wrongly on many, many counts with many hands in the pot. But that's what we put out there. And now, as much as we don't like it, I think we have to stand behind what we put out there.
What we also put out was a 2/3 vote. Now we're saying majority. So now there's some
We didn't
people who are
put
going to
that out.
have, excuse me, on the floor. So people are going to react poorly to that as well. So you're not going to be able to please everyone no matter what you do in this process, because we said debt exclusion requires a town meeting 2/3 vote.
That is what's on our paperwork too, right?
Mhm.
That you passed out, yeah, so we did put that up there.
I think, one second, Robert, did you have something?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify to the points made, is that the article that the air warrant has, and to answer Mr. Schutz's earlier question for you, Mr. Chairman, because the warrant was already published in Shirley, there is a motion, and that motion that town council is recommending, and I've seen it, and Mr. McGovern and I talked, the motion is very similar to this article. The article, we feel, meets the spirit, meets what happened here on August the 15th with the friendly amendment. How does it do that? It says that it will be discussed at a town meeting. The article, as Selectman Livingston stated, is to see if the town will vote to approve the borrowing by the regional school district for the costs of designing, constructing, and equipping the new athletic field complex to be located 141 Washington Street, Air, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, provided, however, that the vote taken hereunder shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters of the town at an election to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, and it goes on. So the article, if moved and seconded on the floor of town meeting, opens up the discussion to the town meeting. Do you approve or disapprove of the borrowing that took place on October 6th? So it allows the discussion at town meeting. And then it's a simple majority vote. If the article passes or the article doesn't pass, the article language specifically says it's contingent upon a ballot election. So a ballot election, as we understand it, is going to happen regardless of the vote at town meeting, but the article will allow for those, and as has been said, the article will allow that democratic discussion at the town meeting. So that's why, in speaking for AIR only, the feeling in AIR was that this article, which was specifically, and we had the ability to do this, and Shirley has the same thing in a motion form to correct, because you're correct, the article is a debt exclusion article on the printed warrant, which isn't correct. It asks for a 2/3, which isn't correct. But they have that motion at town meeting to allow the discussion about the borrow, to take a vote, simple majority, and whether that vote passes or not, the article clearly states it's going to be contingent upon the election. And then, as stated tonight, under the state statute, it's the Board of Selectmen that have the authority to call that election.
So, Mr. Manley, can you comment on what AIR is putting forth as the warrant, and if that in fact, satisfies your question, or what the implications of that would be, should it pass, not pass, and...
Right, effectively what you'll have is a 16N approval and a 16P approval by doing this. And for me, that would be fine, because you could just adjust your amendment to say we were not going to issue these things until we have the affirmative votes of both towns at town meetings and debt exclusions. Then I would know exactly when everything happened, came to rest, and I could tell whether it happened or not, and no one would disagree with our conclusion on that, if that's what you decided to do. But for me, I'm happy with whatever is sort of clear that I can sort of, just objectively assess and say, okay, I understand what they intended by their amendment, and I can see that it happened, regardless as to what particular elements you pick.
Can I follow up? So say, for instance, at town meeting in either town, it doesn't get the simple majority that it's asked for, so it doesn't pass the town meeting vote. Does it still proceed with this language the way it's stated in the warrant to a ballot? And if it were to pass the ballot, does it go forward? Like, what's the implication of a negative vote at town meeting?
This is sort of why this is important for you to consider. If you say that we're not going to proceed unless there's an affirmative vote in both towns at town meeting, followed by debt exclusion votes that is affirmative, if one of those doesn't happen, then it seems to me, by virtue of your amendment language, you're stuck. You don't go forward.
But that's, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Michelle, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm good, go.
But that's not what I heard the AIR article though. The AIR article said they're going to ballot regardless of that town meeting vote.
But it didn't pass town meeting.
Well, they can, and that would be effective with respect to any debt service they might get assessed on this project, but by virtue of your own language and your own amendment, you've said, we're not going to proceed anyway.
Because we're putting a restriction of town meeting on ourselves if we,
Right.
Where are we putting it?
if we keep the language as it is.
The only language is the town meeting warrant article. We just heard what that is, and that does not say
No,
that
our
town
original
meeting stops
vote.
it.
No, but your original, your amendment that you're starting off with is putting another hurdle on the ability to approve borrowing. So not only 16N, but it appears town meeting votes in the affirmative and then debt exclusion posting permit, if that's in fact what you want.
Okay, I understand.
So can I ask another question? If we were to modify the language to, well, I guess that's, forget it.
No, I mean, you're asking what the amendment, you were asking how to modify the amendment?
Well, so I guess I'm wondering, how can we modify the amendment so that, like, even if we were to modify, so that we have this opportunity at town meeting that still would go to a ballot, and the ballot would be binding? I guess what we're saying is it kind of negates town meeting, but it gives an opportunity at town meeting for discussion. And then it goes to the ballot.
And so that would be sort of along the lines of the way the committee handled the last big school project, which is we're approving the debt subject to the town's passing debt exclusions.
Right.
And so you're not getting into the question of town meetings, but you know that town meetings are already scheduled to consider the questions. Someone would need to make it very clear to folks in town meetings sort of what they were and what they were not discussing, or the effect of voting on things as far as that goes.
So there'd still be a vote, it wouldn't be binding on, like, it wouldn't prevent the next step, meaning the ballot.
If a town meeting were to vote no, but the voters turned out in that same town and approved the debt exclusion, as far as your contingency would be concerned, we could see that that was satisfied. That was satisfied. The problem for confusion is obviously there. It would need to be, just well explained.
Yeah.
It seems.
And that's why I would request that we have to go through Robert and then through Mr. McGovern, is the town's attorney makes an opening kind of a statement regarding legalities of the process and what the process is.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just to Mr. Gleason's point, our intent in AIR, as you can appreciate, everything is governed through the moderator, but the plan is that on that article would be to have the AIR Town Council, which is KP Law, but Shirley also has, through the moderator, to make a legal overview, presentation to that effect. That is our intent in AIR.
So at some point, we need a motion to amend, if we're at a point where we're ready. There's 3 in your packet. 2 suggested, 1 in your packet. It may be helpful if we, Michelle, can we bring those up on here, if you don't mind? So we can all sort of see them and maybe walk through them, or however we sort of choose to do this. Maybe. Those are the 3. So those are the 3 suggested, so that we've been given. Mr. Manley, please correct me if I'm wrong here. Number 1 would be that we would be bypassing, we would not use town meeting, and simply the debt exclusion. Is that correct? The debt exclusion process is set forth by 16N and 5921C?
Yes, that's right. So it doesn't preclude the holding of the town meeting, but it just says your contingency rests on the affirmative vote to exclude each town's share of the debt. That's right. That's the first one.
Okay, the second one would be number 1, plus town meetings in each of the member towns shall affirmatively vote the project. Should be taking what?
Adding a 16D process.
Correct. And then number 3 is the committee agrees not to finance the athletic field complex until each member town has held a town meeting to consider the options available to it to meet the financial obligations arising from this project. So with that,
Can we just get a little explanation for what the impact of 3 is, what that means?
3 was just to, if in fact all that was under consideration was an opportunity for town meeting to weigh in, was merely to say that we wouldn't issue any of the debt until the towns have held town meetings to consider the available options to meet the financial obligations under the project. So it wasn't about should we do it or not do it, but it was a question of perhaps should we tell the selectmen, yes, please put a ballot question on the ballot. Not that the town meeting can direct selectmen to do that, but it was an opportunity to discuss the options. But it wouldn't be any more than that. It was sort of an effort to recognize that the town meeting role that's implicit or explicit in the amendment, but not putting it in a posture where there needed to be a yes or no vote on the project from town meeting.
And can I just follow up? So the implication of that, just adding that language, because the prior language is referencing 16N, 17N, whatever the number is, that's the process we're following. We're just saying the town meeting. So adding any language from number 1 isn't necessary because our actual motion was following the N subsection, correct?
I'm not sure I follow you there.
So I wasn't part of the original vote for funding, but when that vote was taken, it was taken to follow subsection N.
Yes.
So by just adding the language in 3, we're just saying it's giving town meeting the right to discuss it.
Right, more acting in an advisory kind of posture than approving anything.
But the funding is through N.
Yes.
So we don't need, so 1 wouldn't be necessary, 3 would suffice because we're already clear that it's going through N.
That's right.
So if we decide to change something, what is the motion? It's a motion to change the motion from August 15th?
motion to clarify the amendment.
Is there any language in the packet? Make sure that's stated correctly.
These are the ones that Mr. Manley suggested that would meet his requirements.
So, not making a motion, but hypothetically, if a motion was made that said something to the effect of, I move to clarify Mr. Quinty's amendment from August 15th, vote on the school committee's authorization to borrow. I'm just confused what we're amending, what the language would be for the motion. And then we would say, obviously, then, amend to include this language.
Strike the language that was added and add this language.
Just want to make sure the amendment's clear.
I mean, frequently what you might suggest is to, amend the language of the amendment in its entirety to now read as follows. And then pick whichever one you want or any combination of things you want to do.
So, but then we also need to state what that amendment was in, like it was in a broader motion to
Yes.
authorize borrowing.
I think in your minutes it's identified specifically as an additional sentence that was added, because remember you took a vote to approve the debt, then there was discussion about the amendment, then there was the amendment offered. I think, in the minutes, I think you just want to, reflect, the amendment offered by Mr. Quinty, which read as follows, is amended in its entirety to now read as follows.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, sir.
If I may, at the last meeting, I had drafted something in anticipation of a potential amendment of the amendment. I can give you a copy of this, Mr. Gleason, to read, or I can read it to the committee.
If you wouldn't mind reading it, that'd be great.
But my suggestion would be a motion to reform the amendment to the committee's August 15th, 2018 motion approving the incurring of $7,100,000 in debt, subject to the requirements of Chapter 71, Section 16N of the general laws for the proposed high school athletic fields project by striking the following language. The committee agrees not to execute a financial vehicle to fund the athletic fields complex without specific approval by town meeting, both Air and Shirley, and replacing it with the following language. Whatever the committee chooses to insert in its place, I think that's the clearest way to do it, to fully understand what's going on.
To the chair.
Oh,
So just to confuse things further,
okay.
having not had a chance to review what Mr. Plunkett's provided us as far as how we could apply the pledge from the Norton Family Foundation, would that amount be amended to $6.6 million? No.
I think that when you're talking about the appropriate, you need a full appropriation to sign contracts to complete your project. So if you need 7.1 million, you have a whole appropriation of 7.1. So that means, because of the authorization of debt, so that means that you can say, when you sign your contracts, you can certify that you've got the availability of the appropriation. As I understand it, the $500,000 contribution or pledge is to be paid over a little bit of time, and you're going to probably need to borrow, let's say, the whole amount for the project just to get it done, a portion of which you then pay down as you went when the pledges came in. So I don't think you want to do that.
Got it, thank you. Bad idea.
Oh, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, speaking through you, the AIR warrant article, if you will, is basically number 3 and number 1. And it was, so in other words, the article, so number 3, that the committee agrees not to finance the athletic field complex until each member town has held a town meeting to consider the options available to meet its financial obligations. Well, that would occur on October the 22nd in AIR and the week before in Shirley. And as Selectman Livingston mentioned, the article is designed to have the discussion as to whether or not the voters approve of the funding from Saturday's election, and to discuss that. And in AIR, whether the debate gets into the actual project and so forth, again, falls, I would argue, to the moderator. And then at number 1 in the AIR article also reads that regardless of the vote after the discussion at the town meeting, that it is contingent upon an election. So I just, again, as looking at this, the AIR article is really 3 and 1.
I'll just point out, thank you to the town of Air for understanding, because it's been so confusing for all of us, and it seems like you're right on the pulse of what our intent was. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So get to the attorneys. So number 3, it says consider the options available. Because there are more than just a debt exclusion, potentially, right? I mean, 99.9% chance that's the way it goes. But I just want to make sure that that language then again doesn't give a vote. Let's say, because if the citizens say they don't want a debt exclusion, then that's your big impact, little impact thing, right? But you're going to go to the debt exclusion ballot anyway. So I just want to make sure we're not boxing ourselves in with any language that says town meeting. I think we've agreed as article warrants we're going to show up, and the town's going to get to have a vigorous debate on it. I just don't want the intent of Air's article, and I think what I feel what I want to do is not messed up by mentioning the words town meeting in there, giving it an authority that it doesn't really have.
Did either, one second, so did either of you want to respond to that, or, I know we kind of didn't look at.
Well, consider sounds vague enough to me, but I want to make sure it's vague enough, right?
Well, I drafted it in such a way that whatever the vote was, if there were a vote, taken under 3, that all I would have to do was find out, well, did the town meeting consider the options? Yes or no? You know, was it on the warrant? Yes. Did they vote on something? Yeah, they voted they didn't want it. Or they voted they loved the debt exclusion, or whatever it might be. Pay it out of free cash, whatever it is. I can say, well, they considered the options. The problem with it is, it would just need to be well explained. Because there might well be those that are quite used to saying, well, yes means something happens and no means something doesn't happen. So it has that potential for confusion. It would not be a problem with respect to satisfying whether or not you had met this condition in your vote. But it could lead to, maybe hurt feelings or misunderstandings among some at town meeting.
Ms. Livingston?
Well, I was just going to indicate that in number 3, it says, each member town has held a town meeting to consider the options. The option is the debt exclusion. So it may be pluralized there, but that's the option. So you in my opinion, by that number 3, you've satisfied that because that's the option when you give it to Air. It's not a question about the field project, and I don't even think the town moderator would allow a whole new discussion about the field project because that's not the warrant article. Only questions and discussion would be about the debt exclusion to make sure everyone understands what a debt exclusion is. And it clearly states, we're going to the ballot. So in some ways too is that, we could also find out that there was so much confusion with the way the article was written that when it goes to the ballot, we ensure that town council has made sure that it's written better to avoid any of the confusion. And it'll also help, they'll tell 2 friends who tell 2 friends and so on.
And Facebook.
I'm more comfortable with number 1 because, again, thinking ahead to other projects, and we are going to start debating a school pretty heavily. It can take a number of years to get to an actual vote on funding, but we're starting to discuss whether we put a statement of interest in for the next 2019 window for that. I think it adds up, again, a possible, intentional or not, precedent that the town meeting somehow plays a role, which it didn't in the high school, it shouldn't in this beyond being informational, and it shouldn't in a future school vote. So I don't want to set a precedent that the town meeting is going to become a part of the way these, for the authorizations to borrow and the debt exclusions that follow them, have to flow. I'll go back to my mantra, follow the statutes. That's what I think everything should follow in the future. But I think 3 sets a bit of a precedent there that I'm comfortable with.
Is it, and this again is a question for the attorneys, is it possible to just include language that says for this project only, or is that so that we're not setting precedent?
I think the article the motion we passed is specific for this project only. We're not modifying our regional agreement, we're just modifying the fields vote. So I don't really, I get what you're saying, Dan. I don't know that it really is going to set any kind of precedent because we're going to be clear at town meeting what the process is and what the purpose of this is. This modification is only for, like I said, for the fields project. It's not our regional agreement. That's what we modified. So that would be.
But the public may interpret it many ways, as Mr. Manley said, him and his own assistant interpreted the original one in different ways. And there have been public statements that said the reason this project's number is so, in the opinion of some, high is because there's going to be kickbacks and padding of pockets going on. We've been accused of that on Facebook. right? So anything the public can get its hands on, certain members of it get its hands on, to say, this is what you said the last time, this is what you should be doing this time, is a town meeting. Regardless of what Michelle just said, and I agree completely, that legally, yes, it's an amendment to a motion about this project only. It concerns me.
I'm real concerned about precedent because I think none of us are going to touch the stove again. We're all going to be really good about doing that due diligence on following the process the way it's written in that big thick book you get every couple of years. I really worry about a precedent being set. I feel that number 2 reflects everything that we put out there. Even though a lot of it was based on errant understanding of applicable law. People rely on us. We gave them the word for these things, and that is the clearest expression of what we told people.
Sure.
Are you making a motion?
Yes, so I'm going to make a motion. The motion is to reform the amendment to the committee's August 15, 2018 motion, approving the incurring of $7,100,000 in debt subject to the requirements of Chapter 71, Section 16N of the general laws for the proposed high school athletic fields project by striking the following language. The committee agrees not to execute a financial vehicle to fund the athletic fields complex without specific approval by town meeting in both Air and Shirley, and replacing it with the following language. No amounts shall be borrowed or expended pursuant to this vote until each of the towns of Air and Shirley have voted to exclude the amounts necessary to pay their apportioned shares of the borrowing approved by this vote from the limitations on property taxes set forth in Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21.
Lisa has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And seconded. Any further discussion?
So with this addition, with this change, we're still going to move forward with the articles at town meeting, right? And Air and Shirley are going to mirror each other. And then, or are we not doing town meeting?
The motion, as I understand it, doesn't obligate us to that, but I would expect that that's the expectation we're hearing from the town bearer this evening. So my intent would be we would honor that, but the motion doesn't specifically say.
Right, I'm just wondering what procedurally.
Is that a second vote, Mr. Chair, to go to town meeting, or just it's understood because the articles are on there?
I'm sorry, ask the question again?
As far as the town meeting goes, our attendance at it and role in it, do we need to vote on that separately because this language does not talk about a town meeting? But I think it seems to be the intent of the board that we will honor that commitment and go and provide information and answer questions.
Can I phone a friend and ask an attorney on that question as far as would we need to take a second vote saying that we would still like the towns to consider that language, still want the towns? I mean, it almost seems like if we threw 3 in there, we would be doing that.
So, is it will the committee that I withdraw that amendment and we restate it with number 3 instead?
Well, I was thinking that it's probably a combination of 1 and 3 together, the 2 sentences together.
I don't think we need them both. I think we just need 3 because our original language is 1. But I think, right? I think we just need to add 3.
So who knows? I'm sorry.
I think that's correct vis-a-vis your amendment. However, if the vote in the town says it sounds likely to be contingent on if we approve subject to the 2.5 question, And then you might again have a little bit of a pickle where you say, well, we don't care because you just had to consider the options. Now, if you don't pass the debt exclusion, that's kind of your problem. You know what I mean? But that would be consistent with what the words of the amendment say now, which is merely town meeting has to.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Maley, when I was reading the minutes of our school committee meeting from 2012, when you mentioned the role of the town meeting, et cetera, I believe that language ended up on the ballot, which is said, unless this thing passes, that we're not going forward.
Yes, I think it did.
So that's where that language would go, not in this.
Well, you can put it wherever you like. I mean, it's a condition that really is at the discretion of the committee.
Yeah, I think we all agree we want to do what we did in high school, which is put that language on a ballot, and unless the debt exclusion passes, there's no project.
I mean, so you're kind of going back, that you're putting this particular project in that same posture by just sort of saying we're not going to go forward without the debt exclusion, but could easily have just been in the vote as well.
So at this point, I would think someone could amend my amendment to add the language in 3, or I could withdraw it, and it gets restated with 3 rather than 1.
That would be, that would be.
I think that would be,
Anyone know Robert's rules well enough? Because can I withdraw this amendment? Okay, then I withdraw my amendment as stated and seconded prior. I'd like to amend it. Please. A motion rather, Mr. Chair.
Please.
A motion to reform the amendment to the committee's August 15, 2018 motion approving the incurring of $7,100,000 in debt, subject to the requirements of Chapter 7116N of the general laws for the proposed high school athletic fields project by striking the following language. The committee agrees not to execute a financial vehicle to fund the athletic fields complex without specific approval by town meeting for both Aaron and Shirley, and replacing it with the following language. The committee agrees not to finance the athletic field complex until each member town has held a town meeting to consider the options available to it to meet the financial obligations arising from this project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Pomperano.
Mr. Chairman, just a clarifying question. So with that change, if both of the town meetings have a town meeting to discuss these options, then what about the issue of the debt exclusion ballot question?
That's
It's
covered
already-
under our, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, that's covered under our intent to, our motion, our original motion of incurring the debt, correct?
No.
No, if what the committee is trying to do is keep the requirement of a debt exclusion in each town and give each town meeting an opportunity to discuss the options available to it, you do need a combination of 1 and 3.
See, now we're still even confused.
So I withdraw another motion. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Please do, Mr. Gleason.
There's message.
With the attorney, Mrs. Green. The motion is to reform the amendment to the committee's August 15th, 2018 motion approving the incurring of $7,100,000 in debt, subject to the requirements of Chapter 7116N of the general laws, for the proposed high school athletic fields project by striking the following language. The committee agrees not to execute a financial vehicle to fund the athletic fields complex without specific approval by town meeting in both Aaron and Shirley, and replacing it with the following language. No amounts shall be borrowed or expended pursuant to this vote until each of the towns of Aaron and Shirley have voted to exclude the amounts necessary to pay their apportioned shares of the borrowing approved by this vote from the limitations on total property taxes set forth in Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C. The committee further agrees not to finance the athletic field complex until each member town has held a town meeting to consider the options available to it to meet the financial obligations arising from this project.
I'll second.
Ooh, Granger got you just us. Our third amendment, third motion, I'm sorry, moved and seconded. Further discussion? Any more? No?
Mr. Manning, does this get us out of trouble?
Yes and no.
Oh, that's not the one, that's not the
You're out of
answer.
trouble with me.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we good? All those in favor of Mr. Gleason's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
5, any abstentions? Okay. Motion passes 5-1. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your patience
Deliberation
and advice.
and helping us through this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes, sir.
Dennis for being here.
Who's going to notify the town moderators and the board of selectmen that their votes at town meeting are no longer binding?
My understanding was the attorney at the beginning of the meeting was going to make an opening statement, at least today. We don't have Shirley's commitment to do that.
Someone has to notify them because they are now going under in Shirley anyway, they were going under the assumption that the town meeting vote was the majority vote and was binding. So someone has to put something together to let them know that's not the case.
Robert, did you say you were working with Shirley?
I'm sorry.
Did you say you were working with Shirley or had conversations with Mr. McGovern and Shirley?
Yes, through the chair, we use the same counsel, different attorneys, and I can only speak for AIR. The intent is through the moderator at the town meeting to have our town council do a legal overview to explain that. And I'm sure that Chairman Livingston, we have a selectmen's meeting next Tuesday. The board will further discuss this for informational purposes.
Have you shared your language that you have in the warrant with Mr. McGovern and Shirley?
Yes, through the chair, as I mentioned earlier, because the Shirley warrant is already published, it's going to have to be motion language. That motion language is very, almost identical to our actual article to achieve sort of the same intent.
Okay, so they're somewhat
But
aware.
that's, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say they're somewhat aware of it.
Yeah, I think with the request that the chair and the superintendent communicate to Mr. McGovern and make the request to help the attorney doing something similar to what AIR is preparing to do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, John Lateef, Chair of the Finance Committee. I think it's very appropriate that the school committee notify officially Mr. McGovern on the exact wording of the motion, because it is substantially different, so that they can consult with our attorney. We have been working together with the town manager and board of selectmen, but it's appropriate that we have that direct communication from the school.
Absolutely.
That's what I just requested.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Our next item is policy FF. This is our first read.
Thank you, everybody, for taking your help.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so policy FF, naming new facilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, so, all right, policy FF, naming new facilities. This is our first read. Only the regional school committee can name school buildings, facilities, grounds, rooms within school buildings, or any other real property under the purview of the school committee. Choosing a name is an important matter that deserves thoughtful attention. Personal prejudice or favoritism, political pressure, or temporary popularity should not be an influence in a naming dedication. The committee traditionally considers distinguished local citizens or state and national leaders whose names would lend dignity and stature to the school. An honoree must be living or deceased 3 or more years for consideration. Source, MASC policy. Yes, Ms. Richards.
Does that say that you have to be at least 3 years old?
I think we need a comma. I agree. I think it's honoree must be living, comma, or deceased. The 3 or more years.
May, living or deceased. We're not going to make them live or deceased. I think there's some wording there that is not smooth.
All right, thank you. Thank you for, I wasn't the English teacher, so.
Maybe living or must be deceased.
Correct, yes, there needs to be a comma after living.
So
Okay,
honorary
just-
may be living or must be deceased.
I don't, do you need the comma? Or would you just
Do
say
you need the
or
line?
must?
Do you need the
No,
line?
if you just change it to honorary may be living or must be deleted, it must be deceased for 3 more years.
And the idea is that you don't have an immediate reaction to a tragedy or death that comes along in the community. That's the feeling of it. But it seems like it's not flowing somehow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clinton, for your markup of this, and Ms. Town as well. Appreciate that. All right, under Chairman's notes, Mr. Clinton did request at our September meeting in Shirley for some homework of 12 policies that should be reviewed annually, 36 every 2 years, and the balance every 5 years. Mr. Clinton, did you have a date on when you wanted those?
You can pick one now if you like, and you can make an annotation on the 12 policies, if you could, through any criteria that you personally like, right? Just the 12 as 1 through 12. So when we select, I'll be able to tabulate the results, we can agree on the 12 are going to be the most frequent review.
So in order of importance.
Right, no need to rank the 36, right? Just the 12. Do you want to pick a date that works for your meeting schedule, Sean?
Well, 1 second, Joyce has a question.
I'll finish that.
November, interesting. November 6th or the first meeting in December?
Mr. Chairman, sometimes we're going to a school conference on the first weekend in November, and there's not very much time between now and then.
Okay. Plus review.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jim, is the first meeting in December good with you?
That's fine.
All right, thank you all. So if you could please provide Jim with those lists, we appreciate it. December 4th is our meeting. All right, also just a reminder that the evaluations would be due for Dr. Malone's evaluation on November 1st. And we'll tabulate them and meet with Dr. Malone through November, and hopefully December, the same December 4th meeting, we will deliberate that, or publicly announce it. Any other topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance? Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I think I got lost, but on the first reading of policy FF, we haven't actually worked on that wording, and so this is not the first reading. It will be reverted to be revised. Is that right, or am I wrong?
So,
We left it as a comment, it's still not, it still hasn't been read, we haven't seen it in whole with those corrections. And it would be good to see it because it's kind of important. In case we come up with good things.
I think it's standard practice that we revise after, we've had multiple readings of many policies. And each reading, we throw more revisions. You can name it any number you want.
Okay, so
Continue on.
does this go as the first reading then, or are we
Sure.
are we going to come back to the first reading? You can come back to the first reading until you're happy with it, and the second reading then puts it in the book.
I would say that the change is not material enough. A comma and a word is not material enough to require a second, another first reading.
Then we need to vote. Accepting that as the first reading.
We voted on the first reading.
I think we'll come back corrected and then we'll.
Okay.
All right, and with that, Dr. Mullen, we do have need for a brief executive session.
Yeah, just a short time contract negotiations.
Thank you. So with that, at 8:43, I will take a motion to enter into executive session for the sole purpose of, contract negotiations, only to return to open session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
Second.